Hello, Aubrey. How's it going today?
Lindsay, fancy seeing you here.
I know. What a surprise. What a surprise.
I
I mean,
know.
normally, yeah,
Where do you usually hang out?
I normally hang out over on the All Ears English podcast and the Business English podcast, but I'm so honored you invited me on today.
Yes, and if you guys have been following IELTS Energy for a while, you are very familiar with Lindsay's voice, or if you listen to our other podcasts. So very exciting to have you here.
Thank you. I am hoping to come on the show a few times, in the next few months. Looking forward to being here. Aubrey,
Awesome. I
what
have
are
a
we getting
question for
into
you.
today? Yes.
So, what is a new slang word that you've learned recently?
Well, I guess the word "riz" is a word that
Nice.
I did not know about until about 2 months ago.
Perfect. Yes, I've started hearing people call each other Riz Master. You're the Riz
R
Master.
Okay,
That's
it's changing
funny.
so fast, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, for sure. That's a good one. We got a great question about slang.
Mhm.
Lindsay, do you want to share this question for us?
Yeah, this is from Jirona. Jirona says, "Can we use slang on the IELTS speaking exam?" Good question.
Yes, and the answer is absolutely yes. Not only can you, you should. Part of
Mhm.
the speaking scoring system, the examiner is listening for a variety of vocabulary. So this means very informal vocabulary, slang, idioms, phrasal verbs, as well as those more formal topic specific words. So
Mhm.
you definitely need to be learning slang. The tricky thing about slang is a lot of it's very specific. It might be
Right.
difficult to use the word riz on your speaking exam, but
Yep.
there's a lot of slang that is much more flexible, will come up on any speaking exam. That's where you want to spend more time being sure that you know these and practice using them in your speaking answers.
Yeah. Aubrey, do you find that a lot of newbies to IELTS tend to assume you can't use slang because normally you wouldn't think about slang on a formal English test?
Yeah,
Do you
this does
find that
happen,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
If you
Yeah.
haven't really learned the scoring system, or you might even read it and not realize what that means, variety of vocabulary. Okay, well, I'm using
Mhm.
lots of different words, that's variety. What that means is variety of informal and formal. So you
Ah.
do need idioms and slang as well as that more formal vocab, and a lot of new students don't know that.
It is so important to know what the examiner is looking for on IELTS. So, what else do we need to know here, Aubrey?
Yeah, so part one is the best place for slang because these are very informal questions that you would ask a friend. So,
Mhm.
because they're so informal, they lend to idioms, phrasal verbs, slang. Definitely plan on using some of this informal vocabulary. Part one answers, and also part two. If you're describing a friend, a situation, you can also definitely use this informal vocab during your part two answers as well.
I love that. So let's dive right into some options for our listeners. And I love the idea that our listeners can study these options and have them ready to pull out of their back pocket on test day, right?
Yes, what we are teaching you today is the easiest slang to use on the IELTS exam because they're replacements for very common words that are definitely going to come up in your answer. So the first one is the word very. Students
Yes.
will say very 20 times on their exam. You cannot repeat vocabulary like that. And there is some
Mm.
really easy slang that you can replace it with.
Right. I imagine if we want to get up and over that band 7, we can't be repeating 20 times. Right,
No,
Aubrey?
exactly. That repetition of vocabulary is keeping you at a 6 or lower.
Yeah.
And if you're not using slang, if you're not varying your vocabulary score cannot be a 7. So,
Love
what are
it.
some things we can say, some slang words we can say instead of very?
Oh, and these are just so much more fun to say too,
Yeah.
right? And the examiner will see that life in our face and it will just increase our score automatically. So, super, totally, and way. Hmm.
Exactly, right? These are all perfect. If you are asked about hobbies on part one, you could
Yeah.
say, I just started getting way into drawing. And all
Interesting.
of these, I'm super into drawing. I'm
Mhm.
totally into drawing. And even
Yes.
into, to use that is really kind of slang and informal. This is perfect for a part one
Yeah.
answer. And of course,
Right.
your answer will be longer. You're going to then share, what do you like to draw? Give some details, but throw in this
Mhm.
slang.
Yeah, to get into something. I love that as a bonus for today, right? For our listeners to study, to get into something, to become
Yes.
proficient or to start to become interesting. Is there any new hobby that you're getting into these days, Aubrey? Just for an example?
I did start coloring in, like, an adult coloring book
Oh,
over the
yeah.
holidays. like a Christmas one. It's actually very relaxing. I was doing it with
Yeah.
one of my teenage daughters while we chatted. It was actually a really good, way to have a conversation with someone while doing so. It doesn't feel like we're
Interesting.
having this sit down serious conversation.
That's so funny. Michelle and I were talking about adult coloring books over on All Ears English, and I was wondering if, do they work to help you feel relaxed, or is it's more of a
Absolutely.
social thing? I love that
Both.
idea.
Yeah, you could do it by yourself to relax,
Mhm.
de-stress, or do it with someone else, and it's a great way to just have a chill conversation.
I love it. So our listeners might, I suppose, this may be a common topic that could come up on part
Absolutely.
one hobbies. So they might want to start thinking about that too,
Yeah, and
right?
part 2 as well, you might just be asked, "Describe a favorite hobby, describe a new
Hmm.
hobby, describe a
Hmm.
hobby you haven't tried yet."
Oh
So
yeah.
all of this slang would be perfect. You need to be ready to throw it in as you're talking about something instead of very. If you feel yourself about to say very, maybe for the
Yes.
second or third time, say one of these instead.
Yes. Don't bore the examiner, please. All right. Good. Number two, Aubrey. What would be another word we want to throw out the door, or just use once? And what else can we use instead?
Yeah, the word is good. You are
Okay.
definitely going to want to share that some things are good. You cannot say that over and over. So, some slang, awesome, rad, or lit, which is a newer one. These are all perfect instead of good.
Wow, lit. I don't use that ever, but I love it. It's very modern and young sounding for
It is
sure.
young sounding, right? But you can say it. It's being adopted more, and I'm starting to hear it on podcasts, TV shows. So, you could
Interesting.
definitely say that you think something's lit or super lit. And that just means really good, really cool.
Yeah. So, for example, if you're asked about sports, you could say, I've always thought volleyball was rad, but I played ultimate frisbee last weekend and it was super lit. And again, and there could be other options if you feel like this, doesn't suit your personality. We could also look at other words to say
Absolutely,
as
right?
well, right?
Awesome, cool, some of
Mhm.
these
Yeah.
that you're more familiar with, absolutely,
Yes.
use those as well, just don't say good or
Don't say good.
very good. It's
Yes.
band 5, band 4, right? You want something less
Yes.
common, more interesting, more slang and informal.
Yeah, everyone knows the word good all over the entire world. So use a word that's more rare. So great. So great. I was about to say good, so good, but I'll say so great.
There you go, even great is better, right? But if you find yourself repeating any word, even great, you've gotta have some other options, some synonyms, paraphrase what you're going to say
Mhm.
to avoid that repetition.
All right, Aubrey, what would be number 3? What's another
Okay.
word we should throw out?
Yeah, number 3 is a lot, which students will say this 40 times on a speaking exam. Like,
Really?
this just comes up a lot. That here I say a lot. It comes up so often in answers, this idea of something happening a lot, or you're doing it a lot, you're eating it a lot. You need different ways to say this. So, what are
Yeah.
some slang ways?
Yeah, so you could say tons, loads, or oodles. Oodles, that's a fun one. I
It is
like
a fun
that.
one. These are all perfect, right? So instead of, yeah, I do that a lot, I do that tons, I do that
Mhm.
loads, or I do that oodles. These all
Yeah.
just mean a lot, but they're higher scoring because they're less informal or more informal and less common.
Yeah, I would be willing to bet that if you use the word oodles, you're gonna see the examiner's, side of their mouth kinda
They'd have a hard
smile, a
time
little
not
smile.
smiling.
They'll
It's
try
such a
not to
fun
show it.
word. Totally.
Oh, so good. So, for
So what if
example, they might.
you, Lindsay,
Mhm.
were asked about your favorite dessert on IELTS?
All right. So you could say, when I was in France, the bakeries had oodles of delicious treats, but my favorite was fresh croissants. And Aubrey, you'd be
Nice.
better at pronouncing croissants than I would.
Well, it's funny
The
because
French
in French,
accent.
it's croissant, but in English, I just say croissants. I say the
Yeah, that
R
works.
like in English,
Yeah. Don't be that
often
person.
yeah,
Right.
you don't be that person that says everything with a French accent when the average English speaker says it croissants.
Yeah, yeah, I do that when I order, Japanese beer, kidding, and sometimes I'll pronounce it with the Japanese pronunciation, and my partner's like, "Don't do that."
Don't do that. Don't be that person. That's really funny.
It's so funny. All
But
right,
you
this is
could use
great.
all of these in one sentence, right? If
Mhm.
you're asked about your favorite place to eat, you could say, there are tons of super awesome restaurants near my home. So here
Yes.
you're using all of those ideas, all of it with the slang instead of saying, there are a lot of very good restaurants near my house. Don't say that.
Yeah. No, that's a really smart idea. So you're really increasing your score just by doubling up or tripling up on the words here. Love it.
Yes.
Okay, Aubrey. So what are we getting into now?
Yeah, we're going to do a couple of fun sample answers. So these are both
Okay.
part 1 answers. And in each answer, we're going to use at least one of those slang words. So, Lindsay,
Mhm.
you ask me first. I'll do the first
Okay.
answer and then we'll have you do one.
All right. So, how often do you watch TV?
Ooh, every night. I am a huge fan of Netflix. There are a
Mm,
lot of great shows there, tons of mysteries, comedies, oodles of cooking shows, which I love to check out, that I
uh-huh.
think are awesome. And yeah, totally relaxing to watch before bed.
Very good. I love how you used oodles. You used totally, right? You used the word awesome. So we got in some really high powered vocabulary into your
Yeah.
answer here,
And
Aubrey.
you did hear me say "a lot of" once, right?
Yes,
I said "a
that's
lot of,"
okay.
that's okay, right? It's alright to say these once, twice, you just don't wanna repeat them more than that, use some of these other options instead.
Keep it
Alright,
colorful, keep it interesting, right? Yes.
yes, Lindsay, are you ready for your question?
Yes, I'm ready. Yes.
Alright, what kind of TV programs do you like to watch?
Oh my gosh. I like to watch tons of different TV programs, Aubrey. It's a humongous variety of what I like to watch. I'm super into this show called Tracker, which features the actor from This Is Us, and he kind of gets hired as a private investigator and goes around solving crimes. But I love to watch loads of different kinds as well. For example, I love the show Ghosts. It is totally rad because it actually brings you back to multiple eras in time where the characters come from different times, from the 1920s, from the 1700s, and they all live together in this amazing house. It's really awesome.
Nice. That was perfect, right? I love sharing about specific shows like you did really boosted
hmm
your answer. You were able to
Yeah.
share a lot more details. So you had this interesting slang, but that's
Yes.
in my answer. I probably could have improved it by sharing more details, talking about a specific show and when I watch it, right? So
Yes.
that was
Yeah.
really well done. The more detail you can get, the better vocabulary is going to come up.
And I think also the more relaxed you'll get, the more
For
focused
sure.
you'll get. I think maybe students might worry about filling the time. Is this a speaking part one
Yeah,
question
this
here?
is
It
part
is.
1. So
Yeah.
your answers can be a little shorter,
Yeah.
3 to 5 sentences,
hmm
but you can't just say, "Oh, I like crime shows." You
Right.
have to give more, you gotta give some details, and you
Yes.
gotta be able to fit in this slang, so you have to say more to be able to
Right.
have that informal vocab for part 1 questions.
Oh, yeah, you need the material. Go into the details, bring that open. I love it. Aubrey, is there another episode our listeners need to check out right away to keep going on
Yes.
this IELTS track, this IELTS train?
Right, we wanna make sure you don't miss, 1171 right here on IELTS Energy, 2 hoots for IELTS speaking slang. A listener asked about the slang or the idiom, "not giving 2 hoots," so we shared some fun slang for not caring. That comes up a lot on IELTS too.
Interesting. I love that. What's our takeaway? Where should we leave our listeners today?
You can and should use slang on IELTS speaking. You have got to get that variety of vocabulary, informal and formal vocab. So a lot of slang really, it has a specific context, so it's harder to use just anywhere. Today's slang is absolutely going to come up on the IELTS speaking exam. So, like you said, Lindsay, have it in your back pocket ready.
I love it. Well, thanks for inviting me on the show, Aubrey. And where can our listeners go to find out their potential score if they took IELTS today? Where can they
Yes, go
go?
to allearsenglish.com/my score. You can find out what you'd get if you took IELTS today and get some resources that are at your level.
I love it. I'll see you next time, Aubrey. Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.